today we're going to start a little bit differently. I'm going to show one screen just to get us started into a conversation. And then I'm going to be asking Stacie some questions and just having a conversation with Stacie. But I want you to engage because we're on webinar. It's not like a regular Zoom call where we can talk to each other. Only the panelists can talk to each other right now. So what I would like you to do is have a conversation with us through the chat. Okay, so Mike is manning the chat and he'll be helping us through that piece of it. But that's how you can engage on your end. Ask questions, give comments, join in with us. And I'll say on the front end here, we're going to have another conversation with an actual Zoom call, a Q&A, with our student and children ministry leaders. We're hoping to do that the week after Easter, possibly that Tuesday following Easter, the 14th. But we're going to work on that in getting that set up through the ERC. And so we'll go through the proper channels and get that out to you. So I will say, if we do not have your email contact, student and children ministry leaders or pastors, if we don't have the contact of your folks who do that in your church, please make sure the conference office has those updated email addresses for your folks so that they can be included in this conversation. Okay, so we have 1 minute to go. I'm going to share my screen just to get us started, and then I'll come back to full view. I know this makes us look tiny, but I just want to get us started with the conversation that we've been having here is how to, let me go to, okay, we'll just leave it like this. How to reconnect while being disconnected. What does disciple making look like now? And today we're going to be focused specifically on what does disciple making look like now for students, children, and families. And that's the conversation we're going to be having with Stacie and all of you. Each week I've started with this chart that comes from the Unique Community, Dave Rhodes and Will Mancini. They've been having this conversation every week with pastors, and I've added this into our conversation. At the beginning of the COVID crisis, over the last couple of weeks, we've been in this adjustment phase. We've been trying to get adjusted to the new normal. What does life look like now? And we thought it was just going to be maybe 2 weeks. Now it's a whole month more. So where are we with that? And now what I want you to really be looking at, and what we're going to be talking about today, is that movement from adjustment to investment, that we're done with getting adjusted, or we should be done. Now we need to pivot and get into investing. Where are we going to invest? How are we going to invest? How are we going to best use this time so that we can move then into engagement, not just now, but hereafter, right? So we want the changes that you're making now to be good changes for the future, not just a Band-Aid for the time that we're in. And so I'm going to switch this over to our conversation with Stacie, and then I'll come back with some resources after our conversation to finish this up. But I wanted you to see this chart that, oh, and across the top, like who we're going to be talking about, who is the community, who are the people, what is the cause, how are you communicating? And cash could mean like value. This is set up for churches to think in terms of, you know, what kind of cash flow could be happening in terms of these first three things. For us, for our conversation today, not that we're not concerned about that, but we're concerned today about the value we're bringing, because I think then value will point to then people wanting to give, right? So that we're going to be looking at what value are we bringing to the table with the things that we're doing in terms of investing and engaging our student, children, and families in our ministries, in our communities. So let's switch now over to Stacie. and we'll go back to full view. And if Stacie wants to share screen, she can do that for sure. But so Stacie, welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to the Mike and Diane show, which just ended up being a weekly series that was quite accidental. We just wanted to be out there helping folks to navigate through this time. And I want you to know that Stacie and I had a conversation last week just chatting about how things are going. And that led to my inviting her into our conversation today. So Stacie, tell us where you serve, how long you've been there, and what are the age groups that you are working with currently?
Yeah, so I'm the Children and Youth Director at the Shermanstown First Church of God. I've been there for, I think it's a little over 5 years. I think it'll be 6 years in June. And I have everything from like toddler, just promoted out of the nursery, the whole way up to senior high.
Wow. That's quite an age range, right?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
So what we're going to do is focus on where you are with each one of those age groups, but you just talk about, how you moved from adjustment, that we were having a conversation about adjusting through this and then into investing, and what that was like for you.
So I'm sure everybody has their own process for everything. And I think right now what I'm seeing a lot on the internet is, and in a lot of sermons that were preached yesterday about grief. So the same way everybody handles grief differently is probably how they handled this situation. And for me, 2 weeks ago, it looked like I couldn't be productive with anything. I kind of was almost paralyzed. Kind of fainting goat style, like you scare the goat and it just whoop, like it. So I kind of went whoop for a week. And then that first Sunday where, there was no one in churches, I kind of got stirred up. And then Monday morning I was like, okay, I'm going, like we're going. So I just felt like, and there was guilt with that. Like, so I just want to say, if you laid on your couch a little too long for like the past week, and, I kept thinking, did I really earn my paycheck this week? And that's not saying I didn't do anything, but I think that's okay. And I think that's, I think that's okay. Cause I think,
Yeah. And I thank you for your authenticity there, because everyone's going to go through stages. I think I was the reverse. I was, heading right into it full throttle that first week. And Mike and I are both very apostolic. And so that was our both charging in. And then this week I felt more of probably what you were feeling. Just feeling that lag, feeling that just almost jet lag in a sense of, okay.
Yeah.
And so trying to reset. So everybody's going to have a process that they go through, and so will our kids, so will our families, right? So, tell us then what you decided to do and how you you use the words, if I could quote you, it's not about isolation, it's about incubation. So tell us.
Oh man. Okay, so this is not an original thought for me. I just want to disclaimer that, but I've thought about it a lot. So it's created a lot of original thought. And basically it boils down to that, we know that the first thing that God says is not good is for man to be alone. And in this, like, I live by myself, and thank goodness I have a bunny, but it is not good for man to be alone. And we're meant for community because we were made for community by the community existing God. And so in a time like this where there's so many limits around us and the term isolation is being thrown out there left and right, like we have to watch our words, and just how, if you are buying into that in this quarantine thing, that could just lead to a lot of anxiety, depression, all of those things that are going to leak onto the people that are around you and leak into the people that you are communicating with. And so I encourage you to just transfer your mindset to, this isn't isolation, this is incubation. And, just if you just sit and meditate on that, I know that the Lord will reveal things to you. But, in this time, I've been thinking about, okay, God, like, give me somebody in the Bible, give me something in your word that will explain how this is a time to like grow and develop and change things up. And we know that, this lifestyle that we're all living right now isn't really too foreign to how society used to be. Like, you didn't see people every single day because you lived far apart, because you had a farm and you worked your farm for your food. And, you didn't have resources the way we have resources today. So, I mean, I've been trying to think about those things, but we know that in the Old Testament, especially, we see where there are times that call for isolation, quarantine. And what are those times meant for? They're usually related to health and to keeping people safe. So after 10 days of being outside the camp, you come back in, show yourself to the priest, and then you're good to go. Also, along with that, in scripture, and like, I haven't heard any, these are just original thoughts, but also in scripture, every 7 years there was a rest for the land. And that Sabbath rest for the land, I'm sure, felt a little bit like this right now. But also, it was a season of preparation. And if you think about even just the isolated Sabbath that the Jews would take, so much of that Sabbath actually started before the Sabbath, because they had to prepare, because they couldn't do any work on the Sabbath, which, something we don't do well. So I see this as like, we need to see this as a time of, what is God preparing for the church? Like, what do I need to be better at? And coming from this experience, what can I say? Man, like, I wasn't good in this area, but now I am, because I've taken this rest. Right. Sorry, that was a long explanation, but
no, a good one. And that's the conversation that we've been having sort of along the way. And you've put more meat to it and gave it more depth, I think, in terms of where you are. So let's flip that a little bit too. So what are the things that you sort of flipped the switch on to do differently within your ministry area, and choose wherever you decided to start first to talk about that?
Yeah, so I felt really guilty and still feel really guilty, because at the beginning of this, all I could focus on was one part of ministry. I have children and youth, which I don't recommend anyone to do to anyone. Like, that's what I always say to people.
Have that conversation another time.
But I started off with my kids' ministry because I knew that they would be easier to reach. Yeah. Which surprisingly is true, because then I started switching over to my youth students, and I've heard from other youth pastors that they're struggling with connecting with their kids. Yeah. And it's so interesting because they're always on their devices.
Right.
And like, now you would think this would be like the tunnel right to them. And for some reason, their engagement level is like, they're not very interested.
Yeah.
My little kids, like kids ministry, they're sucked in. They love it. They think it's so fun. But my teenagers were struggling on that side. And I know that maybe some places aren't. So that's why I've been using time of my rewards, incentives, and I've started some like really weird things that, yeah. So yeah.
Let's talk about that. So tell us about your kids ministry. What did you do?
So what I started doing was more, and this has to change, because one of the things that I've discovered is that although everybody's home, not everybody's home is running the same way. Yeah. And now that the schools are putting out, their game plans, because that took a minute for them to get their game plans together. I was talking with a parent. So if you're doing this, like, talk with parents about what their daily schedule is. Yes. Most of them don't have it. That's been one thing that my parents have been saying, is we don't have a schedule. So if I jump online and I say, hey, at 9:00, we're going to have a Zoom meeting morning devotional, which is one of the things I've been doing, it's kind of hit or miss. But now that they're getting like their school schedules and structure, yeah, I'm hoping that I can kind of survey the group and then figure out the best times to check in with them. So we've been using Zoom, and we've been engaging through kind of like devotions together, but also I have a program that I use that we play games with. Kahoot is one of the ones that we use, and that's really great because they can interact. So if I make questions, I'm going to do one, I'm going to make one. They have preloaded games on there, but I'm going to make one, for instance, that has all of the different elements of our church. I took pictures of everything. So like the alkalite candles and the pulpit and the golden shovel that they used on the groundbreaking. Like I took all these different pictures and I'm going to make a game out of it, just to engage them, asking different questions about like, where is the golden shovel? Like, you've seen it, but where is it in the church, to kind of use every moment to connect those things. And then when I've done my Wednesday night lesson, since we're not having Wednesday night ministry, I actually went into the church to do it. So just trying to like.
So you went into the church. Was that just give them some context of church again? Give them.
Yeah. And to keep something as normal as possible. So, and like our church, nobody's in it. And I was the only one down there. So I did that. I made a YouTube video because what I'm finding is, because not everybody can Zoom at the same time, I had the Zoom kids on there, which I think is important because the kids want to see each other and they think it's fun. Yeah. So I only had one kid that was able to do that lesson with me, but I recorded it. And then I uploaded it to YouTube, and then I sent it out to all the parents so that they could see the lesson with their kids.
Awesome. Yeah, so you had mentioned a couple things that you were doing specifically to help parents disciple their kids. Could you talk about that?
So I haven't done a great job of this in this time because everybody's on their own schedule. But in doing the Zoom lessons, I feel like that's good because most of the parents are within an earshot. And so I think it's good for them to hear their kid read scripture and answer questions that maybe they had to think about because my kids are smart. And, but one of the things that I'm creating right now is a document for Monday, Thursday. We do at our church a Monday, Thursday, and a Good Friday service. And so right now I'm creating a document that will allow families to do that service. I don't know what you would call it, do the service. So, and it's going to have like a recipe to actually make your own flatbread if you want to do that, and kind of like assign jobs so that the kids are a part of that, kind of like the idea of Sabbath. You get ready for the Sabbath before you Sabbath. So I'm doing that. And then I'm going to do one for Good Friday, just for them to have time together. And on Easter Sunday, I haven't quite fully figured that out yet.
Okay, but you got the process going. And you're including whole families in that. And so what, if you could think of, would be just if someone's struggling with how to start or where to start, what would you say? You said you started with kids ministry because so I thought that was brilliant because you've got them and it's easy to engage them. So would it be start where you are, start with what you have, start with what's easy?
Yeah. And if you, and like I can give you examples of some different things that I've done and share my screen so you can see kind of how I interact. But I feel that them just seeing your face outside of their parents' faces is so important. So right now we don't need bells and whistles. We just need connection. So on a Wednesday night for youth group, I need bells and whistles because I got to make kids see that it's worth it. Students, teenagers, but like, we do weird games. We post weird videos. So I would say don't feel pressure to use Kahoot, or I have this sidekick thing that I could play games on. I could do like a million things on it. It's awesome. Just see their faces and ask them how they're doing and let them talk. And then like with the teenage roles, I realize this is a really great time to get people to come to your youth group without coming to your youth group. And so,
can you explain that?
Yeah. So I always my kids are not good at inviting other kids. I don't think it's that they're embarrassed of me. I don't know why. They're just not there. And I have a lot of community kids, but having it be so easy to slip into a Zoom meeting will be like easy for anyone to show up who may not show up or want to show up to a church location on a Wednesday night. And so that's why the other night I did my first one with the youth, and I said, whoever logs on is going to enter in for a drawing for a 32-piece box of foreign snacks. You know how people like to open up snacks and eat them from other places? So that was the thing. And so that student is going to get a box of snacks on Wednesday, used it through Amazon, sent it off to her, as incentive to get them to log on. And so I'm going to keep doing those incentives for those that log on to my borough Zooms.
Yeah.
So borough being our ministry. So, there's going to be an incentive for if you bring somebody along with you to the borough Zoom meeting, your name gets put in for something. So
anything that will hook them in, right?
Yeah. Usually food is the best.
Yeah. Yes. With that age group.
Yeah.
So what are you finding? Do you think, did you have some kickback on them wanting to be present on Zoom? I had another pastor I was talking to from another one of our churches, and he said one of the things, middle school not so much, but high school just didn't really want to show their faces as much on Zoom, which was surprising to us, because we thought, well, they're online all the time, but I don't think they're typically online with their faces, right?
Yeah. I can totally see that being a thing. It just isn't a thing with my kids. Every youth group's different, but I feel like mine is not, we're not trendy. Like, we're not, yeah.
Right.
So.
Right, good. So how about, you said that you were talking about like a refresh or a restart that would be something that could go long term. Is there something you're doing now that you could see being beneficial even post this crisis?
It's kind of something that I've already started and that I've tried to utilize when I'm engaging with especially my younger kids, is assigning them roles and letting them do it. Mm-hmm. So for instance, we did a morning devotional. We did one half of the lesson. And then the second half of the lesson, I shot over to a kid and I said, hey, can you do this tomorrow? And she did it. And I told her how to look it over and kind of do the devotional. So things like that, I've been doing yeah. So, it's kind of easier to do it like this than to get in front of people and do it. So using this as but we've kind of been already doing this. So hand it off, make them talk. Like they need it more than what you do probably. So, assigning scriptures and all that jazz.
So you're growing leaders even in the midst of the COVID crisis.
Yeah, because I'm trying to work myself out of a job all the time. And they've told me some of them want my job. So
replace yourself. That's my motto. Yeah. And so even with the youngest kids, how are you doing that?
So like I said, the other day we did, what scripture was that? It was one of the scriptures. And I said, there's more to this. And we'll get to that tomorrow. And then I shot a kid a message. I said, okay, her name's Ori. I said, okay, Ori, what do you think of you doing this tomorrow? Just read it a couple times, figure out the parts that really stick out to you and why they stick out to you. And then you're going to lead the devotional tomorrow. And so she did really great. And she led the devotional. The kids were listening and they were engaged. She read us the passage. And then at the end of it, she was talking about, and I could tell it was from her experience, that inside of her household, they must be taught, and this is a great family, but they must have been talking a lot about how people are hoarding things and people are not being nice in grocery stores and things like that. And that was something that was really on her heart, was people's essentially kindness towards one another.
Yeah.
And so she's talking about this, and I said, well, Ori, do you think we should pray about that? Like, do you want us to pray about that? And she was like, oh yes. Like she couldn't, she needed me to help her get that out.
Right.
Yeah, so that's been really good, and all the kids pray, and by having kids pray, and all of my kids pray. Like we don't have many shy like they don't exist. Everybody always wants to pray. In fact, I made a video about that. But in hearing them pray, you will recognize what they're dealing with and what they're hurting by, which will then allow you to be able to affirm them and minister to them by listening to their prayers.
Good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you that if as you're hearing from these kids, are you sensing that they're all feeling that but not able to articulate it? Like you said, you had to draw that out of that one child, but it's probably likely that most of them were feeling that way. That I think for kids, in my experience, that one, they do need structure, like you pointed out. The parents I've been talking to have been struggling with that. So kind of walking them through, what does structure look like now? How can I gain some structure in the day, get a schedule going? And also how to really minister to the kids by allowing them to express their emotions.
Oh, yes. Oh,
I knew I would hit something if I
okay, so okay, sorry. I just got so excited. So one of the things that we always do on a Sunday morning before we do ministry is this thing called the emoji paper. And so what?
I'm glad you had this handy.
So because I do it with my kids. So I do exactly what I'm doing now with them is I share the screen. So I hope people can see it.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. So what we do is at the beginning of our meetings, we all choose an emoji. So you say, I feel, happy or whatever. And then they have to follow it up with why. Why do you feel that way? Because emotional intelligence can be taught now. And they need to learn how to be able to identify and name and justify the reason for their feeling. And when you do that, usually you can figure out a behavior.
Yes.
So if somebody, and maybe it's not even their own behavior, like I'm tired, I've had this happen, like I'm tired because there was a party at my house all last night.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so now in that one thing, there's so much more.
Yeah, you found out a lot.
That I know. Yeah. So we start off with the emoji paper, and it's great because the parents, I asked a kid the other day, how are you feeling? And he used an emotion that isn't on here, which is fine, but I wasn't showing the paper, and the mom said, no, what's your emoji motion? And I just kind of laughed to myself because I was like, wow, like the parents really, and the parents all got laminated copies of this. And if somebody wants this, I will send it to you. No problem. You could make one yourself, but yeah.
So that's great discipleship, not only on the part of the kids themselves individually, but for families, especially now. Kids need to express emotions and often don't have the words. So as adults, if we can give them the words or the pictures and then label the word with that picture, like your emoji, it helps to give them a feeling of, one, validation that their feelings are true and okay, and that other people have these feelings, and just a relief and a release to get those feelings out. So there's lots of ways kids get their feelings out. That's one of them. Another one is through activity and through drawings and other ways. But I think it's brilliant that you had already set the tone for that, and it's part of your culture there at Sharmanstown. It's part of the language that you've kind of embedded into that culture, so that parents can carry that over. But it's not too late to start. Like now actually is a good time to start with something like that.
Yeah. And for youth ministry, we started off our Zoom meeting the other night with roses and thorns. And
Good.
so, or highs and lows, like you could call it whatever you want to, which I think every youth pastor does that, or some sort of form of that, but you can tell a lot. And if their high is kind of like, oh, like that's not even a real high, then you know how deep in they are.
Right. Right. I use a scale of 1 to 10. So
Yeah.
if it's a high, how high, is that a 10? How low? Is that a 10 or is it a 5? It gives you the leader kind of an assessment
Yeah.
factor. Where are we with this kid? So even with Zoom, you can get a read from where they are using those tools. So are you getting a read of how especially your students are doing right now during this time?
Yeah, I think one thing that really helped with that, so I would say if you're going to do like youth group meetings over Zoom, get as many as your leaders that you normally have in on it. So when you do that, the kid that maybe doesn't connect to you very well, but connects to your other leader will be more open in it. So I had 2 of my 3 leaders on that call with me, and I know that if I didn't have them, I wouldn't get as good of a pulse on the group. So I would recommend that. And, like my kids are pretty open with how they feel. I've been like really blessed with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I'd say if you have a problem like tapping into that or pulling that out of them, start off with your own vulnerability and lead by example. We all know these things. We all know these things. We just got to turn on Zoom and do it.
Right. So tell me through some of just doing this new thing all on Zoom and online, what are the precautions of like child protection type things now that you want people to pay attention to?
So on Zoom, this is like a new thing with their security. People hacking into the Zoom calls. So what I do is I record all my Zoom calls, and then afterwards I make like a little funny recap video. If you go on my Facebook page, you can find one. So I record all of them just so nothing weird happens. And to give a really funny example of this, I did a Zoom with my kids, and a dad came onto the screen without a shirt on, which is totally normal and okay, right? And I had beforehand told the kids that I was wearing shorts. So, like with my t-shirt. I don't know how we got into that, but I was like, yeah, I'm wearing shorts right now. Pajama shorts. That's what it was. Because I'm still in my pajamas. So dad comes on the screen, and this little boy looks over at his mom and goes, Mom, he's naked. And I was like, he's not naked. Boys are allowed to not wear their shirts around the house. It's okay. Just not at the dinner table. That's not right. And it was kind of funny, right? So then this kid goes, well, Miss Stacie, you're not wearing pants. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. And I'm not even like having contact with children right now. So I like stood up in the video and I'm like, I'm wearing shorts. That's why I'm not wearing pants. But, parents on another end of a device hear that I'm not wearing pants. I hope you question this. I hope somebody sends somebody an email somewhere. So cover your butt and record all your videos. And then I post them onto YouTube, and on YouTube, they're on my like private account, but I give parents access to it. And then if anything weird happens, it's recorded and it'll make the police's job a little bit easier.
Good advice. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. We do have to be careful. And, just because we're not connected physically, things can still happen, even more so with kids being online and being more vulnerable. And we have to remember not all kids will have a parent at home with them at all times. So, some of those things. So let's just wrap it up before we go into Q&A and ask for some feedback. I can see some things in the chat box we might have Mike help us with. But before that, what are some things that you see are the needs that kids are having in your community in general? So not just in children's ministry and student ministries, but in general, how do you see Charlestown kind of interfacing with the community?
So, well, first off, I just had a thought that I just want to throw out there on how I do Zooms with so many people. So, because I have so many little kids and they all want to do this, what I did was, so this is a tip. If you're like, well, there's 25 kids in my youth group, how am I going to do this? I made, every time we log on, I make them get their favorite item from a different room of their house, and they hold it up when they want to talk, and then they unmute themselves and then they talk.
Okay.
So that's something that I figured out from the get-go. I was like, yeah. So, but as far as like our community, our church is really good at checking in on people, and like people have checked in on me, and every time I check in on someone, they're like, yep, I've gotten 4 calls today. So some people I've given up on just because I can tell they're annoyed. So, I would say that one of the concerns that I have that I'd like to further investigate is I heard from my students that some people don't have Wi-Fi at their house, or they don't have a device that they can actually do their schoolwork on. So that's something that I'm trying to figure out in my brain. I'm going to contact the district about that at some point, but I don't have any kids like that. So, but it's on my radar because my kids know kids that are in that situation. So I feel like, and I think there's, like my cell phone service has given me free data for the rest of the month. So I don't know if people don't know that there's things like that out there, that Comcast is doing things, or I don't know. But if that's the case, then let's get something out there for those kids.
Exactly. I think you bring up a good point that, beyond meeting physical needs for kids, like school lunches and things still being provided, meals being provided, we have to remember that there are going to be cases in all of our communities where online access is not possible because of lack of device or lack of being able to pay for the monthly Wi-Fi service. So that could be a ministry of the church, right? Or the community, or somehow someone taking that cause, that's one of those causes that you might take up and just figure that out.
Yeah. The other thing that we talked about, and I talked about this on the phone with a parent the other day, is that so school is not going to happen. School is not going to be physically back in session. However, if the social distancing gets lifted, now there's parents that are going back to work, and we have kids that are at home. So this is something I've been thinking about. And so I've just decided, and haven't really talked to my boss about it, but I've decided that if that becomes the case, we have a building next to our church that used to be the parsonage, and I'm just going to assign every family from the church a different room, and I will just homeschool them all day long and take care of them. So yeah, and just like I already know, like I'm going to keep all the doors open so they don't have to touch doors when they walk through, and we're going to sanitize everything. Like I have a pretty good game plan in my head should that happen. Because that doesn't mean that every daycare is going to be open, and then you're going to have kids that normally aren't even in daycare that are not going to have adult supervision. So, and I know that parents want to get out of their houses. So I don't blame them for wanting to go back to work, but I would say if you have Sunday school classrooms or anything like that, at least for the people of your church, if you cannot do it, open it up to the community, something like that. We'll very possibly need to have a game. Think about it now while you're not thinking about it in the moment.
Right. I was just going to say that. So, thank you for that lead in that, we have to think beyond the crisis or even the next phase of the crisis. And so you bring up a really good point of what could be next. So you moved from adjustment to investment. You're investing in your kids and your students now, but you're also thinking in how to engage them down the road, even in a few weeks, if the social distancing ban gets lifted, at least for me. Thinking in terms of, okay, what might be our situation in our community. So knowing your people, knowing your community, knowing what could be happening coming up, and then being able to prepare for it. is huge, and it really shows great forward thinking and preparation. And so I would just encourage all of you on the call to start thinking that way, and call each other, talk to each other, and spur one another on with these ideas, which is why we do these webinars. So I'm going to switch to some Q&A and see what we have here in the chat. Mike, do we have anything?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
So the other thing is our VBS is the second or third week of June.
Yeah.
And there's going to be limits to our VBS, but I would just encourage you that maybe instead of having VBS, like if we get to this thing where I'm going to have to open up our Christian Ed building for classes, do a day VBS.
Yeah. Oh, that's
to benefit the parents and get all your retired older people that are just at home, just get them to come and just do call it a VBS, but do school and then do fun stuff in the afternoon. Because I'm thinking it's going to cost money to do this. So I'm thinking about transferring my VBS budget into this weird school thing I'm going to do if it gets to that.
I think it's brilliant because really that's the original mindset of VBS. It was to provide sort of that Sunday school during vacation time for the kids in the community. And so providing an opportunity for kids to come into a safe place, to have some schooling, to have some real ministry and discipleship. I don't mean that regular VBS isn't real ministry, but ministering to their needs in a real and authentic way that meets them right where they are. And that's really going to be what ministry is going to be about going forward. It's about people, not about programs. It's about process, and it's about discipling them and making disciples going forward. So this is not just for today. This is for the next day and beyond. So I really appreciate you thinking that far ahead and helping people to get into that space after they move away from, okay, let me get unstuck here and start moving on now, but moving then towards down the road and into future. So awesome.
Yeah, sorry, that was my last thought for us.
I'm super glad you brought that up, because that moves us even forward to the next phases coming up, which is VBS, and that's going to probably be a big question out there. So let's see what we have here in the chat. Mike, do we have some questions?
No questions. Greg just has a game that he was doing in the youth ministry, the scavenger hunt. Each, playing on the Zoom where you bring a item up, you ask for an item, they have to go search for it in the house. Different points. Stacie, do you have places you get games and resources that way for online fun?
Yeah. You had a slide or something, Stacie, did you?
Yeah. Or Diane, do you or do I?
You do. You said you had something to share.
Sorry, I have a train next to my house, and so I had to mute myself because it was going by. It was really hard to hear. So what I have is a program called Sidekick, and let me just see if I can. And Kahoot is really great too. So on Kahoot, you could do so many different things. You can do quizzes and tests, and it's the idea of also whoever submits the right answer first or does the first action first, they get points, and then it ranks them out. So Kahoot's really good. But let me just show you this other one, because somebody might just say oh, that's going to be good.
Right.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I need to share the screen. Okay.
All right.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is what Sidekick looks like, and it's linked to my Download Youth Ministry account, which has tons of games on it, so much stuff. But for instance, the other day when I did the drawing for the kids that had can you see the wheel?
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay, So when I had the drawing for the kids to win the prize, I put it on that wheel and I don't know what's going on there. I made the wheel go off so that,
That's cool.
and that's one of the ways that I engaged with them. That's how we chose the person.
Okay.
So this site also has a ton of other games. I downloaded a 5-second challenge. There's just a ton of stuff. So I really like what this program is doing. And there were I Spy things and games like that, things that were super interactive inside of it. So
That was Spy Kick or is that the Kahoot? Which one are you talking about?
that's Spy Kick, what I just showed you. And then have you seen Kahoot yet, like in life?
I have you, Mike?
One of the questions before we move on, is there a cost to either of those?
Yes, but I don't know if they've made things more accessible. Like, for instance, Kahoot changed some of their pricing breakdowns because of everybody's at home using Kahoot now. A lot of teachers use it. So I don't know about, but I can send out the link, or we're not sending out links, but I think it's downloadyouthministry.com.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Which is a really great resource.
Yeah.
So go ahead and I'll go with Kahoot. Can you share that or not?
Yeah. Let me log into it real quick. And Kahoot is good because it's them interacting with their devices, which is something they're super familiar with. So when we do Kahoot, and we could do one right now and everybody could sign in and do it, but hold on. This is actually kind of weird flipping through screens.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll do is, how do I share like a screen that's like,
If it's on your desktop.
yeah, it is, but it's not. Oh, wait, hold on. Is this it? Can you see it now?
No.
Yeah, it didn't come over.
Okay, so if you go to Kahoot, oh, here we go. Sorry. So here's the Kahoot site.
Yeah.
And what happens is I logged in. So one of the ones we did the other day was a quiz on Adam and Eve. And I bring it up. Oh, and there you can see, I didn't know this, it logs people's scores and their accuracy, which is really cool. So if you do a lesson, you could easily kind of do like a little test quiz thing at the end. It also shows you, I guess this is like the feedback from it all. Like, God created Adam on what day? 25% of my kids got it correct. But I feel that's kind of embarrassing.
Just saying that in my brain, I was thinking, well, that gives you a really good read for where kids are.
Yeah, I'm kind of, yeah. So anyway, that's kind of cool. But yeah, they have all these different things on there that you can choose. You can also create your own.
Right.
Yeah. So it's good.
Awesome.
And it's really easy to log into.
Okay.
If you want to create one, they don't have to download an app. They can just go into the site and they just put in the number of the game and like the host game, and then you go to town.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Mike, do you have anything for Stacie before I switch over to the resource that I have for students?
I just want to remind people, Colleen said not to click on any links on the chat, and so because of some safety and security things with Zoom, so just write it down and you can go to them later, but don't click on any of the links.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do that separately from this call. Yeah.
Yes.
Good advice. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to share my screen here and kind of follow up Stacie's conversation with us. She made a lot of good points on connecting with students during this time. And one of the resources that I want to share with you, where'd it go? There we go. Okay, is unique for students. Make sure you write down the website at the bottom, lifeunique.com /students. Right now, they're running a free online training for this resource. So this is the unique version for students. They're saying high school through very early college age, but it really depends on their, not so much their age, but where they are, maturity. And you can adapt the resource the way you teach it depending on your audience, on what their age group is. But the basis of the student unique version is to help students become who they were created to be and do what they were created, or how God created them to do what they were created to do. And it goes through, just for an example, the 5 different versions of me. The me people want me to be, the me I want them to be, the me they pay me to be, the me I want people to see, which is a projection of self, we call that in the unique process, and the me time makes of me. So they walk students through this process, where the leader walks students through this process. And basically what they're offering this now is the train the trainers, but the Multiplication Commission has purchased several bundle sets. A bundle set is a training guide and 8 student guides to be given out throughout the region. And I can order more at 20% off. So Turning Point has 2 groups running right now, one for young adults and one for younger high school students. And I know I just dropped some off at Mount Pleasant is doing the same thing, a young adult version and a high school version. Antoine down in the South at Think Kingdom is doing 2 groups as well. And so we have gotten some good excitement going and good energy going around this. So in a couple of weeks, we hope to have some feedback after the groups have started. But for now, I encourage you to go for the free online training. I was just listening to my replay of it, and I will tell you that beyond just going through this process to be a leader of this for students, and it doesn't require any coaching certification or anything, but you are going to get coached on how to coach, which is awesome for anybody who's working with student ministry and young adult ministry at this time. You're going to get good instruction on 3-way listening skills, how to speak up, not down, on how to coach students and not be just direct teaching them, right? So this is a coaching process to help you take students through a discovery learning and in such a way that they will receive it, right? And so I'm really excited about this, not because it's unique, but I think it's going to be one of the best ways to disciple our young people, especially during this time. They're going to do a lot of self-discovery. They're going to become more aware of God in their life as they become more aware of how He's working in and through them and how He's directing them to engage with their community, with other people during this time. This is not a program, it is a process. And so last couple times, if you were on my calls before, We talked about the be, do, go, the up, in, and out, right? Creating a culture of discipleship begins with me. And so we're creating a culture of discipleship and disciple making with our students, beginning with them. And that's what this process does really, really well. And so the unique process is gospel-centered life design. The students' process starts with teaching, where biblical truth is presented. There's training where biblical truth is practiced. So there's real hands-on practical application and some real fun interaction with the group. So teaching is the beginning, but discipleship is the end, and that's the end goal, to take them through a disciple-making process. So I've talked about this before, but I'm going to reiterate it because I think Stacie really hit hard on this today. We're talking about a process here, not programs. We're talking about taking families and children and students through a disciple-making process. And if you want to grow your church, grow it by growing people, especially the young people. Start young. Start with what you have and where you are, like Stacie said, but start young as you can go, and then take it on up. Disciple-making processes must replace programs as the primary way of making and adding new disciples. So ask yourself, I want to wrap up with this today. Ask yourself, what if 100% of young people were deployed as everyday missionaries to their everyday mission fields where they live, work, and play? What if we could deploy our young people through this time especially? We've got them. Stacie, pointed out so many great ways to engage our kids at home, our students at home, so that we can deploy them as everyday missionaries, even right on Zoom with each other or through their own devices, their own social media, that they could be out there being missionaries to their communities. So the first step in the process is to know God and know yourself. A high God awareness, like I said, paired with a high self-awareness, is a disciple who knows their identity in Christ Jesus. And that's what this Unique for Students does. It helps students to understand who they are in Christ and how they can live that out fully as a disciple of Jesus. So I encourage you to check that out. Talk to me about that. I'm going through the training myself so I can be fully engaged with that process to help you. Stacie is also, I'll give her a plug, she's also a unique coach and a great one at that. And so I encourage you to just think about this, call and contact each of us or one of us to help you walk through this process and get going with this resource in your church, as well as the resources that Stacie shared with us. So I will end on that note here and trying to get us back into full screen. Where'd we go? Stacie?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just trying
I'm here.
I'm on still this tiny little screen here, so it must have paused my share screen. Okay, stop share. That's what I have to do. All right, there we are. So sorry about that little Zoom awkwardness. So I want to just wrap this up today with anything that anybody might have for the good of the group, or in anything you'd like to contribute or ask as a final goodbye. We do want to have more of this with a, like I said at the beginning, a Q&A time with our student and children ministry leaders. And we hope to do that very soon and get the word out to you, but we can't do that if we don't have your contact information. So make sure that you can message me through Facebook, you can private message me or send me an email, send something into the Eastern Region Conference as well. All right. Anything else, Mike?
I just know this weekend what we did, which was really healing for our church in some ways. It was a lot of fun. We did Higher Hope car karaoke, which means people would pick a song and they would get in the car. We play the song, we lip sync it. So we had like 30 families just lip syncing to some of their songs, whether it's like 3-year-olds dancing in the back seat. And it's a simple thing, but it was like the interaction with our church and the families getting involved, and actually it spread outside the church. I also think it was a great testimony of the church having fun together. And so just it's not always the serious stuff that is like a testimony to the greatness of God. It's also the fun stuff that churches do and ways we connect that way. That I could tell it was a healing thing for many people in our church, the laughter and the play of that. So think outside the box of even the deep spiritual stuff. Sometimes the fun stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
To tag along with that, and I actually forgot about this, but I did, and not many of my parents got into it, and it could be because they were like falling over sheep mode or goat mode, but I sent out Bible passages of scripture, and I went through the Harmony of the Gospels, and I told my parents that, read the scripture with your kids and then send me a skit of you acting that out in whatever way you want to, using whatever words you want to. And I had a family send me back one of Jesus turning water into wine, and it is hilarious. So, and then I told them I'd put a movie together with it. So that could be a fun way for families to engage. For whatever reason, it didn't shoot off really well at my church, but yeah, like have fun. I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's a great call out.
Greg also said we should do a Zoom or another call on just the practical ways of using Zoom, maybe using some of the other programs that Stacie has brought up. He was saying just the little things that he's learning week by week, like how to screen share when showing a video, and just the practical side of using Zoom and other programs to its capability, which is a great idea. So we'll put that on our list of someone who could do that.
That we can do that, and with her help, she's been wonderful in learning all the ins and outs of using Zoom. And so we could make that one of our topics, or maybe she'll put that out for the whole region on one of the general calls and webinars. So, but yes, I think utilizing as much technology as we can right now, because that's what we have, but also remembering the relational pieces of, this week I'm a card writer. I love to write. And one of my resets was to get back to that. And so I found a ton of note cards and things that I hadn't been using. And I kept what I wanted and started writing notes to some people that I haven't been in touch with in a while, especially older folks. But also am donating a bunch of cards and to whomever needs them. So if you have folks in your church, especially the older generation, I think enjoy doing that and feel a little bit intimidated by the technology, or just your younger kids who like to write and desire to do that. Encourage them to write notes to, even if you have to deliver them, if you have to get those, to the right person, you can facilitate that. But that was just a reset for me. It felt really good. And so just some simple things that can be done to cheer up a neighbor who might be by themselves. And so, Mike, I saw your post. Was that all of you and your family in the car? Was that the karaoke?
That's the one. You're My Chick-fil-A was the song. So
we're going to do that. I'm totally stealing that.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it spreads quickly, so it's good.
Yeah, the kids were smiling and having a good time. So, yes, thanks for that reminder. Well, that's I think is a wrap for today. I don't see anything else in the chat or the Q&A. Do you, Mike?
No, I think we're good.
Stacie, I want to thank you for coming on impromptu like that and letting us pick your brains. Thanks for sharing all your great knowledge and insight to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, just send me a message and I'll do whatever I need to. If you want that Monday, Thursday service thing, I'll send it. I'm not
We're all
the best, but I'm not stingy either.
That's right. That's why Mike and I are doing this. We just want to share resources and get things out to people. All right. Very good. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great Holy Week, and
Yeah.
happy
And we'll
Easter.
see. We're not going to do this next week, but we'll be coming back in a couple weeks.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Bye.